Aalto Alvar. The Finnish architect Alvar Aalto, whose work exemplifies the best of 20th century Scandinavian architecture, was one of the first to depart from the stiffly geometric designs common to the early period of the modern movement and to stress informality and personal expression. His style is regarded as both romantic and regional. He used complex forms and varied materials, acknowledged the character of the site, and gave attention to every detail of building. He was also active in city planning and furniture design. Aalto achieved an international reputation through his more than 200 buildings and projects, ranging from factories to churches, a number of them built outside Finland. Early work. Hugo Alvar Heinrich Aalto was born in Kuratane in west-central Finland on February 3, 1898. His architectural studies at the Technical Institute of Helsinki in Otaniemi were interrupted by the Finnish War of Independence, in which he participated. Following his graduation in 1921, Aalto toured Europe and upon his return began practicing in Jyväskylä in central Finland. In 1927, he moved his office to Turku, where he worked in association with Eric Briegman until 1933, the year in which he moved to Helsinki. In 1925, he married Aino Marcio, a fellow student who served as his professional collaborator until her death in 1949. The couple had 2 children. The years 1927 and 1928 were significant in Aalto's career. He received commissions for 3 important buildings that established him as the most advanced architect in Finland and brought him worldwide recognition as well. These were the Turun Sanomat building, newspaper office in Turku, the tuberculosis sanatorium at Paimio, and the municipal library at Viipuri, now Viborg. His plans for the last 2 were chosen in a competition, a common practice with public buildings in Finland. Both the office building and the sanatorium emphasize functional, straightforward design and are without historical stylistic references. They go beyond the simplified classicism common in Finnish architecture of the 1920s, resembling somewhat the building designed by Walter Gropius for the Bauhaus School of Design in Dessau, Germany, 1925 to 1926. Like Gropius, Aalto used smooth white surfaces, ribbon windows, that is, windows in a continuous band, flat roofs, and terraces and balconies. The third commission, the Viipuri Municipal Library, although exhibiting a similar dependence on European prototypes by Gropius and others, is a significant departure marking Aalto's personal style. Its spatially complex interior is arranged on various levels. For the auditorium portion of the library, Aalto devised an undulating acoustic ceiling of wooden strips, a fascinating detail that, together with his use of curved laminated wood furniture of his own design, appealed both to the public and to those professionals who had held reservations about the clinical severity of modern architecture. The warm textures of wood provided a welcome contrast to the general whiteness of the building. It was Aalto's particular success here that identified him with the so-called organic approach, or regional interpretation, of modern design. He continued in this vein, with manipulation of floor levels and use of natural materials, skylights, and irregular forms. By the mid-1930s, Aalto was recognized as one of the world's outstanding modern architects. Unlike many of his peers, he had an identifiable personal style. Finnish pavilions for 2 World's Fairs, Paris 1937, New York 1939 to 1940, further enhanced Aalto's reputation as an inventive designer of free architectural forms. In these designs, both chosen in competition, he continued to use wood for structure and for surface effects. Further renown came in 1938 when the Museum of Modern Art in New York City held an exhibition of his work, showing photographs of his buildings and examples of his furniture. Aalto's experiments in furniture date from the early 1930s, when he furnished the sanatorium at Paimio. His furniture is noted for its use of laminated wood in ribbon-like forms that serve both structural and aesthetic ends. In 1935, the Artek Company was established by Aalto and Maria Gulliksen, the wife of the industrialist and art collector, to manufacture and market his furniture. The informal warmth of Aalto's interiors is best seen in the much-admired country home Villa Maria, which he built for the Gulliksens near Nurmarku, Finland. Mature style. The decade of the 1940s was not productive. It was disrupted by war and saddened by his wife's death. In 1952, he married Elissa Maikeniemi, a trained architect, who became his new collaborator. Aalto's commissions after 1950, in addition to being greater in number, were more varied and widely dispersed. A high-rise apartment building in Bremen, 1958. A church in Bologna, 1966. An art museum in Iran, 1970. His continuing work in Finland, however, remained the measure of his genius. Many of his projects involved site planning of building groups. Two such projects were the master plans of colleges at Otaniemi from 1949 to 1955, and at Jyväskylä, 1952 to 1957. Aalto's experience in planning originated early with such industrial commissions as the Sunila Cellulose Factory, designed 1936 to 1939, built from 1951 to 1954, which included workers' housing and was a triumph of comprehensive planning. The single work that epitomizes Aalto's mature style is perhaps the Seinäjoki Town Hall Group. Modest in scale in its forest setting, it nonetheless asserts a quiet force. Its simple forms are in red brick, wood, and copper, all traditional materials of Finland. Viewing it, a person feels the achievement of a perfect building, in that the essence of the time, the place, the people, and their purpose is brought into focus by the awareness of the architect. There are two buildings by Aalto in the United States. Baker House Dormitory at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, where Aalto was a professor of architecture from 1945 to 1949, and the Library of Mount Angel Abbey, a Benedictine college and seminary in Oregon. Baker House, on the embankment of the Charles River, takes the form of a 6-story serpentine wall of rough red brick. Each of the dormitory rooms, some of which are wedge-shaped, has a view either up or down the river. Like Baker House, the Mount Angel Library is an example of Aalto's response to the site. Its interior construction follows the downward-sloping terrain, enclosing a dramatic, multi-level room that fans out from the entrance. The bookcases are arranged in radial pattern, and the room is lighted by curved skylights that repeat the rhythmic lines of the balconies. Aalto received many honors. He was a member of the Academy of Finland, Suomen Akademia, and was its president from 1963 to 1968. He was a member of the Congrès International d'Architecture Moderne from 1928 to 1956. His awards included the Royal Gold Medal for Architecture from the Royal Institute of British Architects, 1957, and the Gold Medal from the American Institute of Architects, 1963. He died in Helsinki on May the 11th, 1976. Assessment. Aalto's preliminary plans were freely sketched, without the use of T-square and triangle, so that the unfettered creative urge for inventive shapes and irregular forms was allowed full play before functional relationships and details were resolved. The absence of theoretical rigidity revealed itself in his final designs, which happily retained the spontaneity and individuality of his early sketches. As a Swiss art historian expressed it, he dared the leap from the rational functional to the irrational organic. Since Aalto's staff was small, some 6 to 8 architects, all of the work bore the imprint of his personality. Aalto wrote little to explain his work, but his architecture conveyed a variable, lively temperament, free from dogma and without monotony. His work was said to express the spirit of Finland and its people, primitive yet lyrical. His friendships with such artists such as Fernand Leger, Jean Arp, and Constantine Brancusi may have nourished his fondness for curvilinear shapes. While his work was never compulsively innovative, neither was it static. His late designs showed an increased complexity and dynamism that some regarded as incautious. In particular, his work of the late 1960s was marked by splayed, diagonal shapes and clustered, overlapping volumes. Energy and imagination were ever present. Major works: Turin Sanomat Building, Turku, Finland, 1930. Municipal Library at Viipuri, now Viborg in the Russian Soviet Federated Socialist Republic, designed 1927, built 1930 to 35, destroyed in 1943. Sulfate Paper Mill at Topila, Finland, 1931. Sanatorium at Paimio, Finland, 1933. Cellulose Factory at Sanila Kotka, Finland, 1936 to 39, extended 1951 to 54. Villa Mairia, Gullichson House at Normarku, Finland, 1938 to 1939. Sawmill at Varkau, Finland, 1945. Baker House, Senior Dormitory, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 1947 to 1948. Town Hall Group, Seinäjoki, Finland, 1950 to 1952. House of Culture, Helsinki, Finland, 1955 to 1958. House for Louis Carré, Bazoches, France, 1956 to 1958. Church at Vuoksiniska, Imatra, Finland, 1956 to 1958. Norderlands Kunstmuseum, Aalborg, Denmark, 1958 to 1972. Post and Telegraph Office, Baghdad, Iraq, 1958. Community Center, Wolfsburg, Germany, 1959 to 1962. Community Center, Seinäjoki, Finland, 1962. Theater added in 1967. Edgar J. Kaufman Conference Rooms, Institute of International Education, New York City, 1965. Mount Angel Abbey Library, near Salem, Oregon, designed 1965 to 1966, built 1967 to 1970. Bibliography. A definitive review of Aalto's work, extremely well illustrated with photographs and plans, is the 2-volume work edited by Carl Flieg, Alvar Aalto 1963 and Alvar Aalto 1963 to 1970, written in 1971. A brief essay by Frederick Gutheim, Alvar Aalto, from 1960, contains descriptive and critical comments as well as many photographs. A similar book is George Baird, Alvar Aalto, 1970. A substantial chapter on Aalto appears in Siegfried Gideon, Space, Time, and Architecture, 5th edition, revised 1967, and is an excellent critical treatment of Aalto's architecture. No purely biographical work exists.